Hello everyone, this is Video Game Growing Pains with another video review. In preparation for a discussion on the indie developer Star Quail Studios, I decided to give Tiny Barbarian DX, their most prominent title to date, a quick look-see. Tiny Barbarian is a game based on the stories of Conan the Barbarian, written by Robert E. Howard, with a bit of a more comedic and cutesy twist thrown in. It features our barbarian hero, Tiny, going on adventures for treasure and romance while fighting off hordes of enemies. The game has three basic modes to speak of. You can fight off the horde to see how long you will last against an increasingly difficult wave of enemies. You can visit the Hall of Heroes to see those who funded on Kickstarter. My name happens to be amongst them, because I'm awesome. Or you can go on one of 4 episodic adventures. Each of these is a self-contained quest that, while separate, add to the mythos of Tiny Barbarian and the universe. Unfortunately, only 2 have been released at present, but more are coming as free DLC later. The first episode features Tiny fighting off a snake-themed warlock trying to usurp the throne of a city, while the second has him and his main Squeeze, exploring some mountains and forests in pursuit of treasure and Tiny's kidnapped lady. Most of the game is told through pantomime, emphasizing the idea of show don't tell. Every bit of story you need is told through what is displayed on screen, rather than a wall of text. However, for those of you who want a little flavor, there are Tiny Barbarian comics included in the manual on Star Quail's website. Let's have a look-see.
The barbarian is devouring everything! He's hitting on the sacrifice! Stop him! Destroy him! With pleasure.
The story is nothing in-depth, but it is amusing, and even without the background information, the graphics do a surprisingly good job of conveying ideas without words. It's also pretty funny at times. The gameplay is very much like an old-school arcade title. There is no lives, and death only sends you back to the beginning of the current screen. Your goal is simply to complete the quest in the shortest time possible with the highest score possible. To do that, you can run, jump, and slash your way to victory. There are a few tweaks on the established formula, however. Tiny can pull himself up on ledges, use combos with his sword to juggle enemies, and he has a variety of moves, including elbow drops, sword bends, and the ability to deflect projectiles with his blade. And did I mention there were mounts? Because there are mounts in this game, and they're awesome. There is controller support for this title, and the controls feel silky smooth on a 360 controller. They're a little wonky on keyboard, but, they still work very well. Which is good, because the game expects you to be able to master some crazy jumps and some insane platforming sections at times. The enemies are all pretty colorful and interesting, with a few that really stand out, like snake priests who shoot snakes at you after they die, or machine gun hornets. Seriously. The bosses range from somewhat bland to the eye-poppingly gigantic, and are all pretty enjoyable to get through. Graphically, the game is very retro, holding a pixel art style that I find rather distinct from the norm. It isn't quite up to NES quality, yet at times it feels superior, with the quality of the animations and the overall vibrant color palette being much more than what you'd usually expect on the NES. You can see this displayed in numerous locales as Tiny travels. The first episode features a wasteland, city, dungeon, and temple, while the second features high cliffs, vibrant jungles, honey-coated caves, and, well, you'd have to see it to believe it. While not a processor hog by any means, the graphics may surprise you with what they can pull off. The music isn't meant to be period at all, by the way. It's more like a chiptune power rock anthem, and it is glorious. It's great for getting pumped up for the adventure, and it's surprisingly memorable and earwormy. Here, take a quick listen. Now, the hardest selling point about Tiny Barbarian will probably be the length. Each adventure clocks in at around an hour to an hour and a half. Less if you do them perfectly. So, do I recommend Tiny Barbarian DX? Well, at $10, I can understand if some people would want to wait for the other episodes to be released. But I personally love the length of these adventures. Conan the Barbarian was a pulp hero who featured in numerous short stories that gave you just enough of the world and character to be satisfied without getting bored of him. And I think Tiny Barbarian's episodes do the same. They give you just enough adventure and fun to be charming and engaging without dragging and overstaying their welcome. They're great for short little playthroughs that you can just do if you get bored. Action platformer fans will absolutely love this game. And for those still on the fence, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Tiny Barbarian DX's predecessor, Tiny Barbarian. The original Tiny Barbarian! This is a separate adventure featuring Tiny chasing after a frost maiden through a wasteland infested with the undead. It's not as polished as Tiny Barbarian DX, as it was made in Game Maker several years before. The moveset is a little lacking, and it doesn't have features like the ledge grab, but it gives you a good taste of what Tiny Barbarian DX is going to be like. I honestly think it does stand up on its own because it's very fun and relatively easy to get into, even if keyboard controls are your only option. It's a fun little title. And did I mention it's free? Because it's free. It can be downloaded from Starquill's website, which I'm including in the description. It does lack controller support, but I managed to get around that by having a Logitech controller that I could map keyboard controls to. It's not perfect, but it's very workable. Anyway, I highly recommend Tiny Barbarian DX. It doesn't try and innovate that much, but it's a bite-sized adventure that's fun, pretty, and has very good music. In my opinion, it's well worth the price tag. Plus, you can try before you buy with the original to see if the Tiny Barbarian DX experience is just what you're looking for. Alright, now that the review is over, I just want to say that you shouldn't expect too many of these videos to come out. I do them purely on a whim, and like Tiny and his main squeeze here, I've got other priorities. I got things to do. But who knows, maybe I will create another one. Until then, I'll catch you later. Bye guys.